Grab some coffee, a Mountain Dew, maybe both. A storm is brewing. The Brainstorm. Welcome to The Brainstorm with Matt and Mike.
Hey, welcome to The Brainstorm with Matt and Mike. We're going to talk about episode 3. We're actually talking about the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. And again, this is a 3-part series. In the first 2 episodes, we discussed laws 1 through 5 and then 6 through 10. And today we'll discuss 11 through 15, which is the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth by John Maxwell. And I'm super excited because what it does for both you and I, Mike, is it gives us the ability to kind of remind ourselves the importance of all of these laws.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you've learned something before. You got to keep revisiting. You've got to continue to practice what you learn, or it does you absolutely zero good.
Yeah, just learning it and seeing it one time and never employing it is certainly a waste of time, right? And so we definitely love being reminded in order to make sure that we put these in practice and keep these in practice within our organizations. And so I'm super stoked about this. Again, it's a 3-part series. Today's show is the 3rd segment of this 3-part series where we're going to discuss laws 11 through 15. Mike, recap the first episode, which was laws 1 through 5 for us.
Okay, so in our first episode, we reviewed law number 1, which is the law of intentionality. And essentially what law of intentionality says is growth doesn't just happen. It's just not automatic.
Right.
And that's so true. I mean, it takes being highly intentional. You know, you can join the gym and go for a little while, but that doesn't mean you're going to be in, better shape.
Right.
You're going to have to be intentional about scheduling it and showing up.
I agree.
Law number 2, the law of awareness. You must know yourself to grow yourself. In fact, Matt, it's been proven that the number 1 predictor of success in life and professionally and personally really is self-awareness. And so many people today are walking around and they're living not to their true self, or they're just not aware of who they really are, how they come across to people, how they, where their strengths lie. They think they're great at things that maybe they're not, and maybe they're overlooking areas where they really are good and they're not developing in those areas. The 3rd law was the law of the mirror. You must see value in yourself to add value to yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, if you can't love yourself, you can't love other people. The law of reflection is law number 4. And it says learning to pause allows growth to catch up with you. And so essentially what that means is just because you learn something, just because you experience something, doesn't mean that it changes you. We move through life at such a rapid pace today that so often people fail to stop and pause and reflect on what they've experienced, what they've learned, so that way they can actually do something with it and change. And then law number 5 in that first episode, the law of consistency. Motivation gets you going. Discipline keeps you growing.
I like it.
And so one of the things that comes to mind for that, Matt, is oftentimes people go to a conference, an event, and there's some really dynamic speakers, or maybe they take a short, online course, and they get really excited about it, and they get motivated to go make change happen. Or the first of the year comes around, and someone decides to join the gym or whatever area of life it is, and they get really excited. But if they aren't disciplined to continue to work on whatever that is, it's flash in the frying pan. They don't change.
Yeah, no, I absolutely like it. So that was the very first segment of this 3-part series, if you will. And if you haven't listened to that series, definitely go back and check that out. It was a couple of shows ago. And then this last episode that we did prior to this, we discussed laws 6 through 10. I know the first law is the law of the environment, where growth thrives in conducive surroundings. And you definitely want to pay attention to that, because you want, as a leader, as a business owner or business executive, you want to build an environment that definitely delivers growth, not only for your people, but also yourself. Then you had the law of the design. You have to develop a strategy. You have to map out a plan in order to be able to achieve it, followed by the law of pain. Good management of bad experiences leads to great growth. And then I know, Mike, you discussed a couple laws in there. What's law 9 and 10 of the last episode?
Yeah, so law of the ladder is law number 9, and this one is so important. It says character growth determines the height of your personal growth. And so weak character is a major limiting factor. And so what happens is when people make things about themselves, when they are insecure, whatever's driving that lack of being someone of strong character, being truthful, not only with others, but most importantly, really with themselves, it really caps their potential to grow.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then law number 10 is the law of the rubber band. It says growth stops when you lose the tension between where you are and where you could be.
Yeah,
so a rubber band unstretched, just like us as humans, we're useless when we're not being stretched. And so those are the first 10 laws. I'm excited for us to talk about the next 5.
Yep.
And in this final segment of this, such an important series, Matt, why don't you kick us off and talk about law number 11?
Law number 11 is the law of trade-offs. You have to give up to go up. Mm-hmm. We all get caught up in time, right? Time is our most valuable asset, and a lot of times we waste that time. And we often wonder, man, should I have done this? But I was so busy doing this. Mm-hmm. And you have to decide on what your trade-offs are going to be. There's a couple of things you definitely want to think about. You have to think about, what are you willing to give up? What are you willing to give up? What's wasting time right now for you in your business, in your organization? And what will you have to give up? So the question is, what are you willing to give up? And what do you have to give up? And those two things are not necessarily always the same, but you definitely have to think through both of them. And here's the deal. Trade-offs can be bad trade-offs as well, where like time-consuming things when you're already behind. So you don't want to trade off on something, you're already behind, and now you're going to take on this other extremely time-consuming thing. That's a bad trade-off. An average trade-off, you don't really find any growth in it, and it really doesn't help you or your organization or anything other than that, right? And so it's really just switching this time for this time. And a good trade-off are things like time for growth, excuse me, or even better, mission. You want to grow in growth, but you also want to figure out what your mission is and move towards that. So that would be a really good trade-off. Here's a couple of things to remember. The higher you climb, the tougher the trade-offs become. There's no doubt about it. And trade-offs never leave us the same. If they do, you really didn't trade anything off. Be willing to give up the fast life for the good life. And lastly, don't worry about security. Go for significance. That's what good trade-offs are, Mike. And the law of the trade-offs, in my opinion, is vital, especially to people that are extremely, extremely strapped for time. Business leaders, business executives, people that are highly needed, right? And so people are always seeking information from them. The law of trade-offs is law number 11.
Matt, one thing I would like to just add to that, the higher you climb, if you're growing a business or you're trying to grow personally, those trade-offs, they become costly and they're scary. If you climb a mountain, the air gets thinner the higher you climb.
That's right.
And if you fall, the higher you are, the more likely you're going to die when you hit bottom.
Right.
And so that fear of the unknown, the fear of climbing too high, I believe it paralyzes so many people and keeps them from really growing into who they were intended to be.
Yep.
And so I think that if people will just really, really think about that, think about where it is you want to be. You talked about mission, and then really weigh what the cost, that trade-off is. Because the trade-offs, they don't get easier. They only get harder.
I agree. And that was law number 11. So we're going to go into law number 12. Mike, break down the law of curiosity.
So the law number 12, the law of curiosity, says growth is driven by wanting to learn more. Matt, when I was a kid, I had this habit of taking things apart. I mean, hair dryers, toasters, toys. It would drive my mom absolutely bonkers. The bigger problem was that I'd take them apart and I was trying to figure out what made them work. And unfortunately, the majority of the time, I didn't always have the ability to put them back together correctly. So a lot of times they never work together.
Right.
But I sure had a great time doing it. And again, probably drove my mom, bonkers and frustrated her. But really, it was a curious mind is what was driving that. And, really, if you want to grow, you've got to have a level of curiosity. If you're not curious about anything, you don't want to know more. You don't want to explore. Yeah. You don't want to learn from others. You don't want to learn from others' experiences or a curriculum. It doesn't really matter. You have to have a curious mind. And so often as we go from childhood to adulthood, we lose that, that childlike curiosity that really allows children to learn at such a rapid pace. I'd say maintain a beginner's mindset. I think that's really important. When you talk about curiosity, of course, we're surrounded by creatives here, in our business at Splash Omnimedia. And so there's a lot of curiosity around here, whether it's design or writing style or angle for a camera or so many other things. So we get plenty of that around us. But the more experience we gain in life, the more vulnerable we become to losing that so important tool of creativity and curiosity.
Yeah.
And so really, I encourage people to be open-minded. Don't believe that you have arrived. You haven't figured it all out yet. You never will figure it all out. It's kind of like our minds are kind of like a parachute. They only work when they're open.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we think we've figured it all out, we're at the end. We think we know it all now. We're a know-it-all. Our minds close.
Yeah.
Because you're closed off to learn anything if you've already got it all figured out. Why would you need to learn anything new? And so really keeping our mental parachutes open to the possibilities will help us really advance. Keeping that childlike curiosity, as I stated a few minutes ago, is so important. And just like children, I've got 4 boys, 3 of them, in elementary school, and they ask tons of questions, man. It's question after question after question. And so often parents get frustrated by that because it's, usually when they're talking to another adult when they want to ask those questions.
Right, of course.
But really, it's really a trait of great leadership in general. It's asking questions. Don't posture like you know already the answers. You don't have to know all the answers. In fact, you're going to learn more by asking those questions and almost trying to forget what you know in that moment and just really lead with curiosity. Great questions lead to great answers.
Right.
And discovery. Invest time with other people who are curious. I know that's helped me tremendously. Again, being in the environment that we're in, we're surrounded by creatives who are just kind of wired to be more curious than a lot of other people. And that really has kept refueling my desire to learn. And beyond that, stop looking for the right answers and start looking for options. There's usually more than one path to the same end. Gather as many options as you possibly can so you can find the option that suits you best in the moment that you're in. Steve Jobs built an entire career around really not necessarily inventing, but improving upon existing things like the computer or like the MP3 player and the cell phone. And he built a remarkable brand. So it just goes to show how important it is to continue to explore new approaches. So get out of the box. Thomas Edison, one of the most famous inventors of all time, it famously said, "There ain't no rules around here. We're trying to make things happen." I mean, it's so funny,
Yeah, absolutely.
It really is. And so the idea is don't trap yourself into such rigid systems that you lose that competitive edge that comes with creativity, and curiosity drives that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You always want to understand and dive deeper with things, and the law of curiosity is what builds that and what creates that momentum. Hey, the next law is the law of modeling. That's law number 13 in John Maxwell's book. And it's really, really a good law because it's hard to improve when you have no one else but yourself to follow. I often think about sports with that, right? Like you have to watch someone else or be encouraged by someone else to display it, what you want to be able to mimic, if you will. And so I watch a lot of sports, especially golf. Like when you want to play golf, you have a golf swing, you have to model it after somebody. And so I like to play golf with a lot of folks that are better than me, and so I can be better, right? And so the law of modeling is something that I absolutely believe in. Another way of doing that in a business setting is mentoring. Mentoring is probably one of the most important things that I can think about. I think that everybody should have a mentor, and when the timing is right, you should then also be a mentor. Obviously, that's a timing thing because you're not automatically ready to mentor someone. You know, a 16-year-old might or might not be ready to mentor someone, right? Well, a 30-year-old might or might not be ready to mentor someone, but everyone should be being mentored, if you will. You just have to be careful not to listen to too many different voices, because the more voices you get, the more opinions you have. And a lot of times people operate differently from one another. They think differently from one another. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that the who is answered. Who are you going to ask to mentor you? Who are you going to build in that relationship? So the first thing is they should be a worthy example. You know, someone who has had some failures, because not everything is all peaches and cream, obviously. Not everything is perfect. So someone who's had some failures, because a lot of times that's where you learn. You learn in those valleys of life and in business. And therefore you can possibly avoid some pitfalls and roadblocks, right? And so that's definitely something you want to do. And a good mentor should also be available. Like you want to make sure that you're not picking someone who is always in a rush, who's on a time crunch. You got to have some availability, but you don't want to take advantage of that, right? You don't want to overdo it. Just set your boundaries and make sure that you fit within a time area that both of you can commit to and spend some deep time with each other. Because a good mentor will possess much wisdom. And so if you're thinking about something different and they're thinking about something different, and they can't really convey all of that to you. You can't really absorb it like you should be able to. So you definitely have to know that, because a good mentor should care, should definitely care about you and your growth and where you're going, and be able to figure that out. And again, if they're wrapped up in whatever's going on in their life, that's going to be very difficult to do, is really show that deep care, if you will. Everybody has, or everybody should have, I'll take that back, not everybody has, everybody should have a good mentor, because nobody does it alone. No one is extremely successful alone. I mean, you look at people like Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods has a swing coach. Tiger Woods has an actual coach, right? Like a life coach or a golf coach and a swing coach. He has a caddy. He has an entire team of people around him at all times, right? Not just during the golf tournament, like outside of the golf tournament, on the driving range. On the driving range, you'll see 3 or 4 people around him. Either other pros come in and start to contribute to some other things, right? And so that's just, using Tiger Woods as an example, but all PGA Tour professionals do that. All pro athletes do that type of thing. So you actually have to have a full team around you. Also, they have to align with your strengths, but they are very self-aware of their weaknesses. So they have to be humble, if you will, right? You don't want somebody just come, this is how you do it, right? That's not what you're looking for. You're not looking for somebody, you spill it out and they say, this is how you do it. Okay, I got to go. Right? That's not a good mentor. A mentor is somebody's going to sit down with you, listen through it, go through it, and be able to say, I'm strong in that area or I'm weak in that area. Going back to the law of self-awareness that you were talking about earlier, right? But most important, they understand the art of great communication. They have to be able to communicate. So when you're ready, you should definitely be mentoring somebody, but you are ready right now to be mentored. And so you should definitely seek someone out if you're a business leader or business executive and start asking someone to mentor you in whatever ways that you feel that you need that, which is probably always, right? Business, life, all kinds of different things are going on in your life.
And one of the keys there, Matt, is piggybacking off of what you were saying, is those mentors, you can have more than one.
Oh, absolutely.
You have people who are mentoring you in different domains of life.
That's right.
And so obviously if you're wanting to follow someone, be mentored by someone who is very talented in one given area, you probably want to make sure that they are indeed talented and gifted in and have the ability to convey that information. Another little point that I would add is be conscious of your approach. If you're looking for a mentor, sometimes if you go to someone and you say, "Hey, will you be my mentor?" it's very intimidating to them, and they don't know how much time that's going to require. So whether you make it known that you're asking them to mentor you, they can mentor you without them actually being aware that's what they're doing initially. Just go with questions. Say, "Hey, can I meet you for breakfast? Can I grab a cup of coffee with you?" And if you're going to go in and you really want to respect their time, come with questions that are prepared, and so you can get the most out of the experience. And if you really trust them, they can hopefully help recommend some other folks who can add value to you in other domains of life.
Exactly. We're going to go right in to law number 14, which is the law of expansion. Mike, give us the details of the law of expansion.
Law of expansion, Matt, says growth always increases our capacity. And so, there's studies that kind of indicate that the average human only achieves about 10% of their potential.
Yeah, that's sad.
That means not 10% more, they only achieve 10%. That means 90% of our potential for the average person is untapped.
Yep.
So in reality, I don't know that we could say we're truly limitless, but we might as well be. I mean, if the average person only taps into about 10%, that means an overwhelming 90% remains. So there's, for all intents and purposes, it's limitless potential that every human has in their area of potential growth.
Right.
And so what happens is the more we grow, the more we expand, the more we can grow, and the more we can expand. We talked about the law of the rubber band, which is one of my favorites, by the way. But one difference is a rubber band, if you stretch it too hard and for too long, eventually it will snap.
Yeah.
But really, the reality is our brain is capable of continuing to increase capacity so long as we continue to stretch it, continue to nurture it, continue to be intentional about growing it. And so, the question then remains, okay, if we are limitless in our potential for growth, how do we go about making that happen? And so here's a few tips. Number one, stop thinking more work and start thinking what works. And so to do that, ask these questions. What am I required to do? So whether that's at home, whether that's in your business, what are your responsibilities? There are things that you today are responsible for doing. The next question I would ask is, what gives you the greatest return? So always prioritize those things that bring the greatest return to your growth, to your life, to your business, and to those around you. And then third, what gives you the greatest reward? What fulfills you? What makes you feel better about you? What makes you better overall? Whether that's compensation, whether that's confidence. It's going to be different for every person, or it could be some combination of those things. But really, what brings that greatest reward? Stop thinking "can I" and start thinking "how can I." Such a small shift in words, but adding that "how can I" is a reminder that things are possible, that you're not trapped into who you are today. You can find ways to do this thing that maybe you've never done before. And the "can I" is an indication that you are afraid that you're not capable of doing it. So step out of that. Can I leads to doubt, where how can I leads to creative solutions. How can I really allows you just to grasp the concept that there's many ways to get there and I can figure this out. Surely I can find one of them to work for me. Stop thinking one door and start thinking many doors. That's that many different options. And so just explore those things, because you may be doing it one way now, but there may be a much better way for you to do it, and it'll bring more value to your life and to those around you. No one ever made it into the Hall of Fame on their first day. So remember that. Just because you're not great at it today doesn't mean you can't become great. You know, it's a long journey from, you used baseball earlier, so I'll play back off of that.
Sure.
T-ball to the major leagues. You know, there's T-ball and coaches pitch and so forth and so on. And then if you're fortunate enough, you end up playing in high school and college, and then you might get drafted. You're going to go probably single A, and you got to work all the way up before you can get to the majors. And that's a long journey that requires a lot of growth, a lot of, growth. And so they have to continue to stretch and increase that capacity along that journey. Go the extra mile. A few years ago, we shared with our team internally a series, really a lesson on going the extra degree is what they call it. It was 212.
That's right.
And it's the difference between water being really hot and water boiling. And water boiling can
make steam.
Can make steam, which can make a train go.
That's right. Steam powers locomotive.
And so that one extra degree can make all of the difference. So just every day commit to going the extra mile or going the extra degree. Mm-hmm. And before long, you'll have steam going.
Yeah.
And you can make big things happen. Remember, winners don't adopt a participation trophy mindset. We live in this world where everybody should win together. And the reality is, it's not reality. If we're up against a competitor and we're hoping to land a new client, and they choose another organization to serve them, they don't send us a participation check.
Right.
We can't pay our bills with that participation check.
That's right.
That doesn't ever come. And so the other thing about being someone who just continues to expand is just keep going above and beyond. Don't settle for good enough is good enough.
Right.
Good enough is never good enough. It may be good enough for today, but challenge yourself to make it better tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that law of expansion. The next law and final law of this entire series, the 15th law of John Maxwell's book, is the law of contribution. I love that because if you do all of the other laws, right, which is very difficult to put them all into play, but what you want to do is focus on 3 or 4 of them and try to get better at each one of those, then you're definitely going to be contributing at a very, very high level. And that's the law of contribution. Growing yourself enables you to grow others, right? This is where you start contributing to other people's success. And the more people in your organization that you can contribute to their success, the more success you and your organization is going to see, right? And it's a compounding effect. It's going to be significant difference if you can help grow multiple people at one time. And so I absolutely love this law. Just growing yourself enables you to grow others. So here's an impact statement. If you aren't doing something significant with your life, it doesn't matter how long your life is. And so, what you don't want to do is get to the end of your life and say, wow, I don't remember actually contributing to anything, right? And so I've known people that's lived long lives that's done that. I also know people that's lived short lives that's been able to contribute to a lot. So it's not the length of period in which you go. It's how much you're able to contribute during that time. And, when you're looking at, I used golf earlier as an example. When I go play golf, for instance, I play with a bunch of different types of people. I play with people who are really good golfers, and I play with people who are really bad golfers. And so I'm a people person, so I migrate towards anybody that wants to go do something. I go do it because I really love hanging out with people. But I've been around people who is really, really bad at golf. They hadn't even been playing long. And as soon as I hit a bad shot, they start telling me what I did, right? What I did wrong. They start trying to contribute to me, right? They start to coach me. I would caution against that. If you're that person, right? If you're that person, not just in golf, but in business, right? If you haven't yet learned it, if you haven't yet grown yourself, it's really hard to model it. Going back to the law of modeling, it's very hard for someone else to take you serious in what you're trying to contribute. So make sure that you're literally growing in order for you to contribute at a very high level. Because when folks that just aren't good at whatever it is that you're trying to, that you yourself aren't good, you're trying to tell others how to be great at it, it's just not going to go over well. It literally is just not going to go over well. And some people aren't going to be rude, like just, hey, you don't know what you're doing, so why are you telling me, right? So you want to just be conscious and be aware that you yourself have to be able to understand it and do it in order to contribute to have someone else do it. You just can't give advice on something you don't have. So when you learn it, definitely share it, because you want to be a river, not a reservoir. And that's a famous John Maxwell saying, and I absolutely love it. Be a river, not a reservoir. So when you do go learn it, when you do grow, when you do become very knowledgeable and wise about a subject or whatever it is, then that's what you want to go share. You want to help other people and contribute to their growth. So I'm super excited about the law of contribution, because, you know, I try to do as much as that as I possibly can. I know you do as well. And I do see others doing that. And I love it when I'm able to see that. The law of contribution is a very, very powerful law. Just remember that growing yourself enables you to grow others. Contributing to others' life and their business and their skill set and their talents on all types of levels is so very powerful. So it's pretty cool. Which ones out of all three series really stood out to you?
Sure. So it's just so hard because there's 15 of them.
All 15 of them are great.
All 15 are really important. But when you take all of those together and you go and you go to that law of contribution, you just finished sharing with our viewers and listeners. You know, the reality is you got to keep that river flowing. You said river instead of a reservoir. Well, the one thing is, if you have a reservoir, at least until it evaporates, which it will, the water can sit. It's going to be stagnant, but it can sit in one condensed location. That river needs water continuing to feed it. So you've got to continue to grow, so that way you can continue to take information, take knowledge, take wisdom, and let it flow out to others.
Yep.
And what's great about that inside an organization, especially, is when you grow others, you're lifting the potential lid on your organization. You're creating the opportunity to multiply your growth through others, so that way the entire organization can improve and grow together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you're multiplying your efforts.
Yep.
And that's wise business.
Absolutely. So that's one of your favorite. One of the ones that
it's
really,
one of my favorites. I think it takes
impact.
all of them, and it's kind of the accumulation of all of them.
All of them kind of lead to that one.
Yeah, they really do. Another one's awareness. You know, I mentioned earlier, self-awareness is the number one predictor of success. And so I think really becoming in tune with who you are, and then understanding, based on who you are, what seat to put yourself in on what bus. Like, where do you need to really invest your time to develop and to grow? If you're really strong in a few areas, which I know that everyone is strong in a few areas.
Oh, sure.
God gifts each of us differently.
Sure. Absolutely.
And so don't try and become someone you're not designed to be. Go grow in to become the best version of you. And that's where you're going to find the greatest joys in life and the greatest opportunity to really make an impact.
Yeah.
And then I will share one more, Matt, and I'm going to combine that rubber band and expansion.
Sure.
Those two kind of work hand in hand.
Absolutely.
And that expansion, though, is so important.
Yeah, if you're stretching yourself, then you're obviously expanding.
That's right. That's right. And so I think that's really important. And the reality is this: if you've stopped learning, you're going to stop growing.
Right.
And so it's so easy to get into a rut, just like someone going to the gym or whatever habit it is they're trying to build. Once you get out of habit, it's a little painful to get back in habit because you haven't been stretching.
Right.
So stretch like the rubber band so you can expand and grow, and that'll help everything in your life, ultimately improve. How about you, Matt? Why don't you share a few of yours?
Yeah, I love the very first law, which is just the law of intentionality. I talk about it all the time. I kind of use it in all aspects, though. It's not just growth, right? So the law of intentionality, because this is a study on growth, and you have to definitely be intentional to grow, because if not, you will fill that time with something else.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's always something else to do, always, right? Which is not just about growth too, and intentionality. In my opinion, it's about everything that you want to do. You have to be intentional. Good things don't just happen, right? If you want good things to happen, you have to go make them happen, right? If you're a salesperson listening to this show and you want to go make sales, you're not just going to sit back and sales are going to come to you. You actually have to go make them happen, right? If you want to have good quality team members in your organization, you have to be intentional about helping them and contributing them, modeling it. You have to do all these other things. You have to be intentional about making good things happen. Another one of my favorites is the law of the mirror. I love that law. Talk about it all the time as well. And again, what the John Maxwell's book focuses on is you must see value in yourself to add value to yourself, right? You have to start with yourself. When you get on an airplane, the first thing they do is tell you to put oxygen on yourself and then help others in a scenario where there's an emergency, right? Which I hope you never have to experience. I definitely hope I never have to experience, because I'm terrified of flying anyway.
Right.
So if I ever experience that probably would definitely be the last time I ever got on an airplane. But you definitely have to help yourself in those cases. The law of the mirror is important. I love Michael Jackson's song, The Man in the Mirror. If you want to actually make a change, then you have to start with yourself. So if you are a business executive or a business leader and you want to make a change, then you have to make it in yourself first. And then you can actually go help make whatever changes you need to make in the organization. So I absolutely love that. I won't go back over the law of contribution again. You recapped that, and I talked about that just moments ago. The law of contribution, though, is definitely one of my favorite laws. So that's the third segment. That wraps up kind of the third segment of the series, the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth by John Maxwell. It's an awesome resource. I definitely would recommend that. Mike and I both, and we have multiple others, are certified John Maxwell leadership coaches here, and we would be happy to help facilitate this throughout your organization. We teach this curriculum on behalf of the John Maxwell team, and we love doing that because every single time we do that, we see significant growth and contribution throughout the organization, and it's a pretty cool thing to see, Mike.
It really is.
So just very quickly, laws 1 through 5, the law of intentionality, the law of awareness, the law of the mirror, I just got finished talking about, the law of reflection, and the law of consistency. That's 1 through 5. Mike, what was 6 through 10?
So we have the law of environment, the law of design, the law of pain, and the law of the ladder. That's and then we finish off with the law of the rubber band in the second segment.
Yep.
And then today?
Yeah, and today we went over the law of trade-offs. You have to give up to go up. The law of curiosity, which Mike went over. Growth is driven by wanting to learn more. And then the law of modeling, and then followed by the last two, the law of expansion and the law of contribution, of which both Mike and I find in our top 2 or 3 laws. So that's the 15 Laws of Growth by John Maxwell. It's an awesome, awesome study. I love that. Go to thebrainstormradio.com. You can subscribe to our podcast there. You can also check out our YouTube channel. You can see plenty of resources on our website with thebrainstormradio.com. And always feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to chat. We'd love to help you and your organization with this and any other thing that we could do. Again, go to thebrainstormradio.com and check out all of those things. And we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks again for checking us out.